Hello and welcome to the College of Lore. I'm your co-host Anthony.
I'm your co host, Josh. Today we're going to be talking about just some basic tips on how to be a generally good, not sucky DM. Um, just to, kick things off and talk about some tips that will help out people who want to run their own games. Full disclosure though, not everyone runs their game the same way, and I don't want me and Anthony, to come across as this is the end all be all. This
No,
is how
you
you
have
have
to
to
do
run your
it.
games.
Legally, you have to run your game this way. If you don't, I will come over to your house and play a game of Dungeons and Dragons with you because I'm lonely and I need friends. So the first thing I think we should talk about is DM integrity. When you're running a game, it is your responsibility to take care of all of these people who decided to play a game with you. You're the guy. You're owning the rule book. You're making up the game. Like if you go into a board game and you pull out the rules and decide how play is going to work, that's you. So there should be a certain level of integrity to it. I think
Yeah.
that sometimes there's mystery in stories and you don't know what's going to happen next. It's your job to kind of respect the curtain. Even when you're playing, there's a curtain for a reason. You hide your roles. Um, it has all your notes behind that screen, that DM screen, and you kind of want to respect that.
I actually kind of see the DM as sort of the host of the party.
Hmm.
You're kind of in charge of sort of babysitting your group, honestly, not to, poop all over them. But you're the one who's basically going to be setting up the game. You're writing the story. They're going to come over and you're going to host it. And they
Yeah.
kind of expect you to provide. It's the most thankless job uh, because you put so much time and love. And they're like, yeah, man, I wrote my character. And then you're like, well, I wrote an entire world for you. So, but in terms of that, it's important to, like Anthony said, to maintain that DM integrity. You don't want to reveal the man behind the curtain, so to
Yeah. So what
speak.
do you mean by that? What things could you hide and what things could you reveal?
So there's a lot of things that DMs do that aren't always as planned out as players want them to be. Sometimes you were too busy that week and you couldn't write the next session, or you were sick, or you just weren't in the mood, like you were lazy, or you just had, writer's block.
I
Sometimes it
mean, who
happens.
has every NPC planned and mapped
Exactly.
out? I know who the barber's son is. You don't have
I
all
mean, I
that.
write that in my stories because
Well, all right.
I'm a genius.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it's important to know what your players should know and what they do. In my opinion, when you go into a DM game, you don't want to tell the players that you're unprepared.
Hmm.
Sort of like in a presentation, you can't start it off by saying, "Hey guys, I had a really busy week, and I don't have a lot written." That is the worst thing you can do because it sets you up for failure.
True.
Even if you weren't prepared, you better act like you are prepared. Um, so when you roll your rolls, even if you're fudging them, if you're making up NPCs on the fly, if you're making up things that your players will enjoy, there are a lot of sessions where the best things are all improv.
Okay.
And players don't know, so don't reveal that it was improv. Let them believe that you are this master formulator of plans and worlds,
All right.
because
So on that
who doesn't
same
want to be?
note, if if I have had an off week and I have nothing prepared and I'm not super confident in my ability to run a game, should I just run the game for my players or should I maybe ask everyone if let's take a week off and get back to it next time? What's more
So
important?
yeah, that the latter is certainly, in my opinion, a possibility. I wouldn't obviously suggest doing that frequently because sometimes your players will just forget honestly what they were doing unless they all write
Oh,
notes. Yeah, and they'll lose player agency or not agency, but they'll forget what they were doing because they're players and
yeah, they have other
this
things on
is
their
your
mind.
baby. But yeah, if you aren't super confident and you do want to run the game, like if you do want to run that week because Dungeons and Dragons is fun,
Hell yeah.
um, go find a module or something that you wrote up previous, or encourage them to role play their characters. Let them get to know each other. Have social encounters that are easy to write.
Okay.
Let them get immersed in the role, what you've already written. Like let's say you've written a city. Let them go shopping. Let them role play each other. Let them have simple encounters with NPCs that don't matter that much, and then kind of go from there. If you're not super comfortable with improv, let's say you're new and you don't really know how to pull stuff out of the top of your head, then I would say maybe steal some modules or ideas from Reddit because I do that all the time.
Oh yeah. So can you steal social encounters too?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I do to do that. All you gotta do is really change some names, make it relevant to your location, your city, your mood, I guess, and
Okay.
just make sure it doesn't screw up the pacing of the game.
Yeah,
Obviously,
pacing.
if your players are about to fight some big bad dragon, you can't say, "Oh, go talk to these dwarves. They need some help getting flowers from the river." Like that. No, don't do that.
Yeah, every dwarf I come across is desperately in need of river flowers.
River flowers are a necessity
Right.
and a commodity. Okay, they're a luxury. Good.
Forget that metal ore. Give me some flowers.
Give me them sweet, sweet petals.
So we're trying to act like we know what we're doing when we're DMing. Um, what's what's one way that we can maintain that pacing that you were talking about?
There are a lot of things or tools that you can provide for yourself ahead of time to help with the improv to make the curtain stay closed. I know what some people will do is they'll have a list of names that they'll use for NPCs that people come across that aren't
Okay.
important, and they'll just pull from the list so you're not digging for notes when someone's like, "Oh, what's your name?" and you're just like,
I find it's good to cross those off as you go along. This way you don't.
yeah.
Jameson. That's another Jameson.
So what I'll do when I do that is I have my list and I won't cross off names, but I'll like underline them and then I'll write what kind of accent or what kind of race they are
Smart.
that I've used next to the name. And then after the game, like post session, I'll add that to my list of stuff. If they become invested in that character, you kind of have to as well as a good GM. It's generally good to have plot hooks and then you have potential hooks. So when
Okay.
someone gets invested in something, you got to be invested with them because they're your players and you love them and they're your little children. So, if you have that random barber who's struggling and they're like, "Oh, we got to go on this thing to save this guy." Well, I guess that's what they're doing. So, you got to help them out.
I see. Okay. So in that way, you're kind of catering the story to your players and like working together, writing a story together. You have the world, they have they're going down a path in the many roads that you've created, and then you're step by step laying down bricks and tiles for them to walk on as they go along.
Yeah, not every game master does that. I think it's important to note that railroads to some extent are helpful and useful. If you have a main arc, you should have railroads, but you should hide them with side plots and multiple paths. So you may have a railroad that you want the players to ride, but you give them 3 or 4 different ways to get there. And
Here's
this guy might lead back into it, He also might just be a fun side quest for character development. So eventually they'll go back to the railroad, It's very easy
Yeah.
to get players to get latched onto things, and if you know your players, you can cater to that and then get them to go where you want them
true.
to go.
That's why having a backstory is so good, because you can like use that to kind of rein in your players, pull them left or right. You see a beggar on the side of the street. Oh, my character used to be a beggar on the side of the street too. He's gonna like go in there, and then the beggar's like, "So happy that you gave me money. The last guy that rolled through town didn't give me anything. He was this rich noble." And then the party's like, and then that rich noble leads back to your original story. So railroad is like kind of you forcing your players to go down the story that you've written previously. A really good example of a railroad would be like you're fighting, and then you beat these bad guys, and then suddenly the town's guard show up, and there's 100 of them, and then they throw smoke grenades, and then the wizard casts sleep on you, and it's like super high level, and you pass out, you wake up in prison, like forcing your players really hard down to do that one prison arc that you want them to do.
Do you think that is okay sometimes, or is that like a no-go for dungeon masters to give them solid railroads?
I mean, I've done it. Was it the best thing to do? It kind of made my players a little upset. I think a better way to do it, if I wanted to have them have a prison arc, would be there's something in the prison that you want to. You have to break in and then break out of the prison. There's something that you want that your players want. Maybe that would have been cooler. Or have them individually get captured. Have them be able to escape for a session or two, but then eventually get there. Like, okay, you escape. Great. Half your party's in prison. What do you do?
Now, I personally believe that it's basically up to your players whether it's cool or not. Some players are super simple. just want to ride the railroads all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And some people, like your party, they want a little more player agency at all times. So you kind of just have to talk with your players, honestly. Figure out what they're looking for, because not every group is the same.
Very true. There's a lot of different types of groups, a lot of different types of games. There's like West Marches games where, okay, that's kind of like a Kingmaker that we played together, where you start out at one point and your job is to explore this vast land. And then there's different interesting encounters in each hex or tile that they go through, and different ways to advance in terms of roleplay, in terms of leveling, secret items, and different things that are interesting as they explore the lands. There's your straight up and down good versus evil. You start out as a group together, and then you're in the town, and then you find plot hooks, and then there's some evil thing at the end of the road. And
the Lord of the Rings epic.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
I thought, you know what we should do? We should do a podcast episode for statting out every character in Lord of the Rings. I think that'd be interesting. I've been watching Lord of the Rings a lot recently.
I actually haven't. I haven't watched Lord of the Rings in quite some time. But in regards to characters and statting them out, actually, so when you're catering your characters, it actually encourages roleplay. It immerses them into the world because it feels like they matter. I think that's also a really important fact of being a good DM. You need to make the decisions of your players seem like they matter, even if they don't. Even if you have it all statted out, if you know the plans of what's going to happen, you need to make their decisions feel like they matter, because that sort of builds the bond between player and DM, the trust, I guess you could say, so to speak. Because when you change the world around them based on what they want or what they do, it makes them feel like heroes or important. Because let's be real, these players are the main characters of the story that you're writing.
Right. So do you mean like decisions that they make in terms of how they build the character, or decisions that they make in the game, roleplay wise?
Well, backstory wise,
Okay.
I think depending on the player and the character and the DM and how much the DM is willing to sway, I think that should affect how people treat the character. But in the game, when a character role plays, their decision should ultimately affect the path that they go down, how people will treat them in the long run, and how the world changes around them. Obviously, in the beginning, they will have less influence, but as they get stronger and grow, and their level increases, they'll have more influence because they'll be stronger people. And I think that it's important as a DM to reflect that. You don't want to be seen as a commoner when you're a level 13 paladin. It doesn't make sense, You've got a $4,000 greatsword. Like, people are going to notice that.
Unless you also have a 4,000 GP cloak of hiding to hide your greatsword. In which case,
people will notice that you aren't there at all. And then,
this giant, I hear steps, I hear armor clanking, and something's pushing me out of the way.
But on that regard, that sort of goes into the fact that the game is not a DM versus the player type deal. It is a team game.
Yeah.
It's collaborative, really. The DM posts challenges and the players overcome them, or try to overcome them. Most of the time, overcome them.
You watch Critical Role?
I do watch Critical Role.
One of the things I love so much is that when one of the Dungeon Master, Matthew Mercer, when one of his encounters gets like completely crushed by like one or two actions of a player that like it shouldn't have been that hard, or shouldn't have been that easy, and it should have been way harder. He loves it so much. He's like, man, that's really awesome. I was so happy. Maybe he's like faking it, but at the same time, he's like encourages their successes.
Yeah, I think that's really important to encourage your players. Not every encounter should be that easy, obviously. There should be encounters that are more important and have heavier weight, but when your encounter gets crushed, you should see that as an opportunity to make your players happy. With every build-up, there needs to be a tension release, and that can be one of those
game,
moments.
Right? You're trying to make sure everyone's happy.
Yeah, a lot of DMs that I know or that I've seen get annoyed when their characters or encounters get absolutely annihilated by smart character play, because they see it as like a game of chess where you're like trying to outsmart your other players. And then sometimes that's true. You want to present them with challenges, but you want them to overcome. You don't want to kill your party. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you want that?
Yeah. Unless you really want to run another game. All right, rocks fall, everyone dies. We're playing Star Wars.
What do you feel about catering to specific players in the party? because everyone excels in different regards. So how would you go about, making everyone feel quote unquote special?
Well, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at their backstory. I'm gonna see what plot hooks they've left for me in their backstory, and different ways that I can kind of pull the reins one way or the other, and kind of show them like, look, I'm looking out for you. The second way would be I'd look at how they're building their character as their character progresses, and I'd look at certain things like, oh, they took lockpicking. This fighter took lockpicking. He's got like high dex, and he's gonna want some locks to open. So when he gets a chance to open that lock, he's like, yes, I took a bet. I like gambled on this. I thought maybe there's gonna be lock picking in the future. I took lock picking. There's a lock. I opened it. I feel great. Any type of skill or thing that they take, if it's story related or if it's personal to them, or just making them not feel useless. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I chose my character not to be magical at all, and there's this one thing that magic couldn't solve but my character could solve. I don't
Yeah.
think I have a good example of that, but maybe like uh magic.
Let's say there's a room with a lock, and the
Yeah.
entire room has been has a dispel magic on it or something.
Sure.
Yeah,
Or-
I think that's
or
really
it's at
important.
the end of like a long tunnel and everyone has used all their spells for the day, and the bard forgot the knock spell, or already used it in that regard, and couldn't get past the door. And the fighter that took lockpicking in this example
Yeah.
is the only one who could do it.
Yeah, adapting to your players, I think, is really important. A lot of different groups will have different players, so sometimes you'll get that guy that min maxes, or
Okay.
builds his character to be really strong and optimized, and then the characters that are built for roleplay more so than their optimization will sometimes get left behind. And I think it's a DM's job to encourage both forms of roleplay. You can't, or
Sure.
both forms of character creation. You shouldn't punish someone for wanting to have a good character, and you shouldn't punish someone for wanting to make their character realistic. So you should encourage both. Give encounters that will let the fighter annihilate everything, make him feel good, and then
Yeah.
give encounters that would benefit the guy who roleplayed, the guy who isn't so good in super encounters, but he's maybe good in social encounters or puzzle solving. Give each player, I think, their time to shine, and they'll all love you for it. Because
Yeah.
not everyone needs attention 24/7. They just need to feel like they're important.
I'm thinking back to a couple games that I've played in, and when the dungeon master kind of like looks to your character and points you out and says, all right, it's your, what do you do, and the situation, like, it's your time, here you go, here's the ball, I'm handing it to you, what do you do? It feels scary, but also feels very,
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of
yeah.
pressure. But at the same time, it's like, even if you fail, you can take that as an opportunity to help your character grow as a person,
Yeah.
to learn from it.
Yeah.
And also, it still feels kind of good because the DM was thinking about you. They gave you an opportunity. You know what I mean? Instead of just getting left in the dust where everything is just giant, rock monsters and you shoot arrows all
Okay.
the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
They have shields. Your arrows don't go through the. All right.
Oh, they're all in murder holes and you can't do anything. Like that feels bad after, a million sessions and you're just sitting there. Especially if you're not even spec'd for like social encounters or magic. You just spec'd for
Sure.
combat, and then
Yeah.
the DM just unintentionally or intentionally shuts down your combat ability. I actually think that is a bad trait of a DM if they
Sure.
shut you down completely. The DM should be creative enough and think around it enough to make it so that it works for all party members. I mean, because let's be real, if the DM sees it as a player versus character story, not a player versus character, a player versus DM story, the DM will always win. They have an arsenal of an infinite possibility. They will always win. There's nothing that
You're God.
you
You
can
can
do
do
about it.
anything.
Yeah, you are God, but if you see it as a team effort, then you can give your players time to shine, and everyone will have more fun for it.
Here's
You
an
can see your
idea.
players succeed, and that's always good.
You're starting off the story. It's the very beginning. You're trying to build a world for your players. But there's the barbarian, okay? And he doesn't have any charisma. He doesn't have any want to roleplay or whatever. He just wants to smash stuff real good. Have a bunch of bandits come through town. That'll not only build your world as they run through the streets away from your character, but it'll also give your fighty guy a chance to do some fighty.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you can also build off of that for everyone else later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he gets to fight things, and they get to figure out why the bandits were attacking the town in such big forces. So everyone wins, and then you get to see your children grow because they're your children, and then you grow, and then everyone's happy, and then everyone gets to celebrate and have a party.
Like a beautiful garden, we all grow together.
Yeah, it's like those beautiful river petals. It's beautiful river flowers.
So in terms of those like encounters that you're kind of making for your party, please, dungeon masters, plan your encounters. Please like know the stats of your monsters, the amount of time it takes to like look up a werewolf and figure out if he can jump 50 feet into the air on top of a building. That just takes way too long. I don't know why I brought that one up, but it's just been on my mind recently. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't look up rules. If your session takes place in a city and they're running around, you want to make sure that, knowing exactly which alley they turn down and the name of the street, maybe not as important as understanding that your players can go up, around, and down through the city in this three-dimensional space that you've created rather easily, whereas in like a forest, maybe, or like plains, they can't go down, but they still can go up in the trees and stuff like that. So think about climbing, think about rivers, if there's going to be any swimming that they're going to have to do, or they jump into the sewer, think about any type of checks that they'd have to make environment wise. And then also for the creature that you're creating, know its stats, know that the creature that you're presenting to your party is an appropriate level for them, and an appropriate challenge to where they all stand around it, they all corner it, it's one big thing, and they all hit it until it dies, versus you want maybe a more challenging encounter. There's a bunch of goblins and murder holes, and maybe they just have to escape instead of kill them.
Yeah. I also think it's really important to cater somewhat to your players. If you guys didn't notice that there's a reoccurring pattern with DM to player, cater to your players. Some encounters, the CR level or the challenge rating level that D&D provides, or most games provides, is a guideline and not a hard number. Generally, players who are spec for certain things will be better at those encounters as opposed to other things. Who would have guessed? So plan your encounters accordingly to what you think your party needs to be challenged with or doesn't need to be challenged with. It also depends on what your encounter is for. Not every encounter is designed to be just a smash it until it dies. Sometimes, you need to talk it out. Sometimes the encounter is meant to set the mood. Encounters that are incredibly easy may be there to set up your party to make them feel powerful and strong, only so that you can show them how strong something else is later down the road to, set them in their place.
Absolutely.
Or they might be really strong so that you can set the mood that the place that they're in is perilous and unforgiving. So Make sure your encounters have a purpose behind them other than, hey guys, here's an encounter to take us some time, fight these things, do that stuff, get that loot, move on. Because you want your encounters to be impactful, or at least somewhat impactful depending on, where they are.
But again, memorable.
Yeah, but you obviously don't want them all to be exactly the same in memory. The big BEG one, you want to build up the suspense. So you might use an encounter beforehand to really rise the tension. And then when you actually face the BBEG, it won't be just that encounter with him that made it memorable, but the entire mood that you set prior. So encounters can be a really strong way, combat or non-combat, to really amp up the tension so that your players feel it more.
Yeah, here's an example. Maybe like your players show up to a city, they roll up, they're learning about it, they find out that there's a folk hero. Folk hero is like this super strong looking guy. He's got golden armor and everything else like that. And the rumored big bad evil guy happens to stroll into town. The folk hero challenges him to a fight, and then the big bad evil guy just like instantly kills him. It's not even a clear victory. He does it, and then he leaves, leaving some type of cryptic message. And if you've done it correctly, if you've built it up correctly, if the characters have gotten attached to this folk hero and then he dies, that's a plot hook.
Yeah, especially if they know how strong he is. because then
Yeah.
they know, oh snap, this guy is way beyond us because the folk hero was way beyond us.
Right. And it's
You
not
know?
like don't kill one of your players to prove a point, unless that's something that they've discussed with you beforehand.
Yeah. Also establish that sometimes your players can run away. A lot of groups don't think that they can run away
Yeah.
from fights.
Easy.
But they can run, and so can bad guys. Goblins don't want to fight really to the death. They want to preserve their own life, even though they are idiots.
Yeah.
Not everything fights to the death. So encounters are a lot more dynamic. D&D generally likes to make them very black and white. Like, this is a combat encounter. This is a
Sure.
non-combat encounter. You fight it or you don't. But there's a lot more breadth to it once you get in depth with encounters and what they can do for you, because they are just as strong a writing tool, I guess you could say, as a plot hook or a story arc or a player backstory. I think that it's sort of an underutilized tool, if you know what I mean, because people just use it for fights and XP.
Combat encounters?
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
even
for
social
sure.
encounters.
Yeah. I mean, the goal should be clear when you're writing these encounters. Like, you have a clear idea about what your players need and want from you in order to make their story good. So if you've built a character that's really good at avoiding damage, then and they want to use that, maybe the goal for an encounter is to run away, like you said. There's some other goals like surviving, running out, grabbing an item, and then running back, returning to a place, guarding a group of people. I mean, possibilities are endless.
Yeah. And each of these types of encounters can be used to encourage a sort of mood or form that you want to tell the players.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all signs and signals, Is this a
But that
riddle?
should be clear.
Are the enemies clever? Are they brutes? What are you facing, basically? And I think that isn't something that a lot of GMs think about, but they should. Every encounter should be as significant as the writing arc or the time that you put into building a city.
How can you make that clear to your players?
I think, depending on the encounter, making it clear, if you want them to run, like you said, giving them a point of perspective. Let's say the players really want to fight the big bad guy, but then the big bad guy crushes the folk hero. Obviously, that's a sign for your players to run. If you want them
If they're smart.
Yeah, but I feel even if they were to fight it, it's fair game because you give clear signals
Sure, yeah.
that your players are being overpowered.
Yeah.
If you want your players to fight, you put them in a position of time necessity or a dire need to save someone or something that's important, so they have to stay around. If you want them to be scared, put them in a situation that makes them uncomfortable. Don't tell them what they're fighting. Don't give them put them out of their comfort zone. Maybe several encounters in, they're really comfortable. They're killing everything super easy. And then they fight something that they are not built to fight.
Yeah.
You
Like
know?
ghosts, and none of their weapons hit ghosts.
Yeah. I actually ran an encounter, for example, once where my party was in the woods. You were actually in this game. My party's in the woods, and the thing that they fought had really long arms, and it would just climb tree branches, hide in the trees, and then dart
Jesus.
down and basically scratch you up, stab you, bite you, and then go back up into the trees. And I think you guys had one ranger.
Oh god.
So it was really hard to fight.
One ranged weapon.
Yeah, one ranged weapon, because everyone was spec'd for super
Big
melee
sword,
combat.
melee.
So they got like a swing at it, and then it would go back up, and then it would reposition. And it was like, and it was also nighttime, because everyone decided to travel in the dark. So it was spooky. Like, it set the mood for the woods, because it was scary as because they couldn't find it, and they didn't know what they were fighting.
And then we found out that there was like nests of them, and there were more. Like, we had that much trouble with one, and then there's like
Yeah, so
a whole bunch
it
of them.
was-
This
that encounter set the mood for, hey, this area is scary.
and dangerous.
You should either prepare for it or don't go into it. And
Yeah.
I think you guys decided to go around it.
We got a clear message from that.
Yeah. And that was one encounter. It wasn't, it was a fight. It was a combat encounter, but it set the mood for the rest of the woods
Yeah.
for what people would fight. So in that regard, it really, I guess, spoke to you guys. I'm glad it did.
No, yeah. I still have gamer PTSD from that.
It's a great encounter. I love my encounters.
It was a very good encounter. We can talk about plot hooks. They should also be very clear. Okay, so we have DM integrity. You're not supposed to reveal what's behind the curtain, but the clues and hints that you drop in terms of encounters that you're creating and plot hooks and the story that you're telling, it should be clear, I guess, that they exist and that they're there, but not so clear about the information they're trying to convey. Like, the theme should be there. This is a dangerous place, but like, oh, you see a monster. Like, what was the name of that stick monster thing? Like, we don't even know what the name of it was. You
Yeah,
told
I
us,
never tell you guys the name of the creatures.
right?
I think I told
tell
you
us,
out of character.
I don't recall. But
I
what
can
I
look
do
it up.
recall was the emotion that that creature conveys, but not its stats. Like, I don't know it's a thing with stick arms, Branchy Boy that has a climb speed of 3.
Branchy
whatever,
Boy.
like, that's what I
I
call
like
them.
that. That's what he's called. Branchy Boy.
It's a CR6 encounter.
It's a CR6 Branchy Boy.
Pray you do not fight the CR7 Branchy Boy. But
I would
yeah.
agree with you though. I think plot hooks should be clear. I don't think that they always have to be vague. Sometimes they can just be in your face. Some guy walks up. It depends again on your players, because sometimes they need that slap on the face. Hey, this is where you should go. Go here,
Yeah.
maybe potentially. In addition to what you were saying though, I also think that it's important to be open to new plot hooks that you have not written. Earlier, I spoke about how sometimes players get attached to unnecessary things, so
Okay.
you can use that. And then when your players go follow that path and do that thing, they're like, wow, how did you know I would do this? You're a genius. And then you get to say, I know everything. And you can use that to your advantage, because
Yeah.
everyone in the world that you have technically should have plans, goals, problems, fears. Exactly. So if you can elaborate on those more than you had planned, this is kind of an improv thing, but over time you'll get good at it. You can expand your world and make it seem more real, and that increases the immersion, which is really the ultimate goal of the DM, is to have amazing immersion.
Yeah, I remember I used to start every session. All right, immerse me. I've got my eyes closed. Immerse me.
Well, I don't have
Immersion.
I don't have a a salt pool to like put you in.
Oh
Like, a
yeah,
tube.
give me a deprivation chamber.
Yeah.
Oh god, how to gaslight your players.
I'm pretty sure it's not expensive to do. Like, to go into one of those chambers.
I think if you own a facility, you'd probably charge a pretty hefty premium to get in. But I think if you were to set up your own bathtub
true.
as a deprivation chamber, you could do it with enough
You could
salt
probably
and
do it.
water.
You can probably do it.
That was in Stranger Things, wasn't it?
Yeah, they did it in the gym with a little blow up thing.
Yeah,
But,
all right.
we're not sponsored by Stranger Things, by the
No,
way.
but Netflix get at
So,
us.
You know what? Yes.
Uh,
Calls on Netflix. Anyway, yeah. So plot hooks, they
wait, hang
are.
on, my phone's ringing. Hi, Jim. Netflix? Is that? Yeah, I'm doing good. No, just running a podcast right now. A sponsorship? Yeah, sure. I'll think about it. Okay,
Our
send the
schedule's
paperwork my
pretty
way.
Busy, so.
It's a little busy, but
Our people will contact your people.
okay. All right, great talk. Okay, bye. No, you're the best. Jim Netflix. What a guy.
First name basis. But plot hooks should be used like any other tool to guide your
breadcrumbs.
players to your ultimate. Yeah, the breadcrumbs.
It's not
to
the whole
your
loaf.
ultimate goal, really.
Okay, real quick, if I can go back to, I guess, that your players can get attached to things. Sometimes your players don't get attached to things. Sometimes you're like, hey, here's this wacky NPC I just created with a funny voice and a crazy backstory, and he definitely needs your help. And the players can just be like, nah, we're good, and walk away. If they do, let them walk away. They'll get attached to like this 12-year-old kid that just happen to be playing stickball with his friends, and it doesn't matter. That character, all right, suddenly now I have to think of this character's thoughts, fears, wants, needs, and everything else that can push this character along in terms of how my players are going to interact with him. But if they don't latch on to every little thing, that's fine.
Yeah,
let it go.
Some of the stuff that you put a lot of time to is going to get ignored. You're going to have to get used to that one. I've had giant encounters destroyed in like minutes because they decided to just walk away and not do it. And I was like, oh,
Sure. Yeah.
All right. And, you kind of just have to, it's actually not that bad. because encounters like that they don't deal with, you can just put those in your pocket for later.
Yeah, you recycle them.
Yeah, you can recycle them, reskin them, and they'll never know because they never encountered it.
Yeah, that social encounter though, with that one wacky NPC that has a funny voice that you want everyone to latch on to and think is the coolest thing ever, sometimes it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and that kind of comes with knowing your players and knowing what they like.
Yeah.
And using that to your advantage.
Yeah.
I have a player who hates spiders.
Okay.
I made a dragon that was made of spiders. So, use it as you will. Abuse it how you like.
I have a player and not a friend because he's no longer your friend after that dragon spider thing.
Oh, no, he died. He's dead. Yeah, he's dead to spiders.
Mm-hmm.
He's not actually dead, guys. He's still my friend. Yeah.
He's fine. He's fine. He's fine. Legally, I have to say he's fine.
But don't get into the habit of forcing things on your players too hard. If something is important, what I like to do is something is really important that you need to have to come across that the players just flat out ignore. If they're ignoring everything, make them pay for that with consequences. If they want to ignore the guy who pleads for help because his city is under attack, when they come across that city, the city is destroyed. If your players want to rob and steal everything, make guard come after them. There are consequences. The world is a living, breathing vessel.
If they kill that guard, then now there's more guards after them.
Exactly, because the guard was a Hydra.
What?
And it has 2 heads now.
Oh yeah, they come from the plane of cops, and then they just like they open up a rift and then they all just come out. Yeah, there's a joke about the plane of cops. If your NPCs all start to look alike, your players are going to start thinking that the town is full of chimeras or elemental rift to the plane of cops. So
that makes sense.
Make sure that everything's like a little different, a little flavor. Take some aspect and tune it to 11, tune it to 7. Just kind of mix and match things and make it so that your world is a living, breathing thing.
Yeah. So, these aren't all the tools used to be a good DM, but it'll get you started. So basically, you don't want to tell your player your secrets. Half of being a good DM is being a good secret keeper.
Ooh, that reveal when you hold it.
Ooh, reveal. Also, I've learned as a DM is you should relish in your players' want to know. The more they want to know, the more invested they are, and you should use that. So don't tell them. Let them relish in it,
Yeah, let them ask questions.
Look at the cake, but don't let them eat it.
Yeah. And the cake is like behind some opaque glass, and they can't even tell if it's a cake or it's a
Exactly.
bomb.
It's just the silhouette of a cake. They don't even know what flavor it is. If you do that and you encourage your good role play and you play like you're part of the team, then most of the time, no guarantees, small fine print disclosure.
Hopefully.
Your players will enjoy the game, and so will you.
Oh man, you're talking about relishing in your players' lack of knowledge. My favorite phrase to say to my group, like my brother still brings it up sometimes from the game that we used to play, that I ran, and he's like, "You don't know, right, Anthony? That's the thing, you don't know." Yeah, because I would say that all the time. People would be like, so is this guy related to? And like, well, he looks similar, but you don't know. What's your favorite? Yeah. Also, yes. Try asking.
Yeah.
Can I punch through this wall? You don't know.
Yeah. I love doing that to my players.
Hard to say.
Yeah. I think that about covers it. I think that's about the end of the lesson. Bell's about to ring.
Yeah. I mean, any questions, comments, or concerns, you can go ahead and send a magic letter to us.
By owl.
By owl, yes.
Or by email.
Yeah, also by email. All that information should be at the description at the bottom. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
Oh, class dismissed.